Sri Lanka is a constitutional, multi-party, democratic republic with a freely elected government. Presidential elections were held in 2019, and Gotabaya Rajapaksa won the presidency. He resigned amid protests on July 14, and Parliament elected Ranil Wickremesinghe as president on July 21 to serve the remainder of the Rajapaksa term. Wickremesinghe appointed Dinesh Gunawardena as prime minister on July 22. In parliamentary elections in 2020, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa led the Sri Lankan People's Freedom Alliance and small allied parties to secure a two-thirds supermajority, winning 150 of 225 seats. COVID-19 travel restrictions prevented international observers and limited domestic election observation. Domestic observers described the election as peaceful, technically well-managed, and safe considering the COVID-19 pandemic, but noted that unregulated campaign spending, abuse of state resources, and media bias affected the level playing field. The Sri Lanka police are responsible for maintaining internal security and are under the Ministry of Public Security, formed in November 2020. The president holds the defense portfolio. The military, under the Ministry of Defense, may be called upon to handle specifically delineated domestic security responsibilities that generally do not include arrest authority. The 11,000-member paramilitary Special Task Force, a police entity that reports to the Inspector General of Police, coordinates internal security operations with the military. Civilian officials maintain control over the security forces. There were reports that members of the security forces, primarily police, committed numerous abuses. From March through July, the country experienced civil unrest driven by an economic crisis including power cuts, soaring food prices, and a fuel shortage. Demonstrations called for the resignation of then-President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and other Rajapaksa family members from government leadership, as well as for political and economic reforms. Significant human rights issues included credible reports of unlawful and arbitrary killings, including extrajudicial killings, torture and cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment by the government, harsh and live, threatening prison conditions, arbitrary arrest and detention, transnational repression against individuals in other countries, serious problems with the independence of the judiciary, arbitrary and unlawful interference with privacy, restrictions on freedom of expression and media, including violence and threats of violence against journalists, unjustified arrests of journalists, and censorship, serious restrictions on internet freedom, substantial interference with the freedom of peaceful assembly and freedom of association, including overly restrictive laws on the organization, funding, or operation of non-governmental organizations and civil society organizations, restrictions on freedom of movement, serious government corruption, serious government restrictions on or harassment of domestic and international human rights organizations, lack of investigation and accountability for gender-based violence, including but not limited to domestic and intimate partner violence and sexual violence, crimes involving violence targeting members of national, racial, and ethnic minority groups, crimes involving violence or threats of violence targeting lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex persons, laws criminalizing consensual same-sex sexual conduct between adults, even if the laws were not enforced, and restrictions on workers' freedom of association. The government took minimal steps to identify, investigate, prosecute, and punish officials who committed human rights abuses or engaged in corruption, and there was impunity for both. On May 9, supporters of then Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa attacked a peaceful protest camp in Colombo. In the evening after the attack, violent demonstrators attacked government supporters across the country, killing 8 individuals, including a member of parliament, and setting fire to or otherwise severely damaging more than 80 houses of members. The government reported as of September it arrested more than 3,300 persons in relation to the May 9 violence and that more than 2,000 had been released on bail. Civil society groups reported that the majority of those arrested were peaceful protesters, while those who attacked the protest camp were not arrested.